All right, so today we're here with life coach David Solomon, and he's also a spiritual teacher. David is obviously a really phenomenal guy, well known in the industry. David, could you tell me briefly, how your spiritual journey began and how you became a teacher and stuff like that?
Yeah, I'd be really happy to. This has been a huge passion for me since I was honestly 12. And for many, many years, I've studied a lot of meditation and spiritual systems, advanced healing systems, alternative medicine, received tons of sessions, given many sessions. And about 4 years ago, I read Dean Radin's book, Supernormal, which was about the highest level yogic superpowers, instant healing, materialization, telekinesis, resurrection, like the highest stuff, but full of
Right.
references. And that in combination with knowing some very high level teachers and having had a lot of personal experiences, not with resurrecting anybody or teleporting, but, affecting the weather, rapid healing of people, light coming out of my hand, so many things, like over 200 things I wrote down and some I talk about in my books. I really became convinced that there was a rational, credible basis to magic, or as I like to say, the science of applied consciousness. Arthur C. Clarke said any advanced science is indistinguishable from magic, and just to draw a distinction between fantasy and stage illusion. So what I teach, what I study, what I practice is the most efficient techniques to strategically learn, practice, and improve upon, you could say, the science of ascension. And that includes healing, that includes skill building, that includes demystifying mysticism and making sense of all these traditions, this woo lingo, these practices. So magic is accessible and magic is useful because you know what you're doing and why. And then I think what the industry needs, because it is an industry, or what the field needs, is fun. And a tagline for my book is make spirituality fun again. So people can hit me up. I'm going to make a few comments on this post. So people can hit me up directly.
Right. And for those of you watching on YouTube, we'll put that in the description and in the comments as well, so that you guys can check it out. So,
sure. Yeah, I'm making a comment for you now.
Cool. Okay. So, what are some of the metaphysical practices that you do, on a day-to-day basis? Like, do you practice yoga, qigong? You mentioned telekinesis and stuff like that earlier. Do you do those kind of things, or?
So there's a fine line between things that are practical and things one of my great teachers called party tricks. And I like to call flashy magic. So, a good friend of mine is really into telekinesis. He talked about a Russian telekinesis school. He and I are both skilled. I think he might be a bit more skilled than me.
I'm sorry, a Russian telekinesis school. What can you tell me a little more about that, since a lot of my audiences do telekinetic stuff?
Yeah, as I was about to say, I think there's a difference in practical values between that and aerokinesis, which I was going to mention. I personally invest my time practicing these skills and leveling up in the most useful techniques fundamentally across the world.
Okay.
So I feel that telekinesis and aerokinesis and all the flashy magic stuff, you need a foundation of a decent level of awakening, a decent amount of concentration. What Patanjali says in the Yoga Sutras, the prerequisites for siddhis, and a pretty healthy and clear energetic system, just using the chakras and meridians just to be concise with that. And as those refine, as your awareness refines, as you're clear, you have access to all that stuff. And so personally, I practice more in manifestation, on bigger, faster manifestations that are fully aligned with my intuition and purpose, because I feel that's the cornerstone for everything. I also feel, though, that for people interested in telekinesis, it's not hard to make a formula to rise up in skill. And one of the things I love doing for people who reach out for mentoring is, once I tune into them, saying, okay, in about 45 hours or whatever it would be, you can get to level X. And I think there's a lot of mystery in spiritual teachings of something happening eventually, or after such and such practices. In fact, I've only seen one teaching school that says, do A and you'll get to B. And A is a practice and B is a level of development, and etc.
Right.
And that's the Self-Realization Fellowship by Yogananda's organization and their Kriya Yoga practice. I haven't done the full 2 years of what they recommend, but I feel like we need more structured protocols like that to give a realistic application. Just like learning piano, backflips, Japanese poetry, those skills have been around for so long, it's not hard to deconstruct them from a certain starting point of physical.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. That's awesome. Okay. So like so back to the question, like on a day-to-day basis, like what exactly do you do? Like, do you like, maybe do like a meditation in the morning and stuff like that? Do you have like do you follow like a specific routine or?
Yeah, I have 2 to 3 hours of personal spiritual practice every day. In the morning, I go for a walk or run or some cardio. The first half I practice either Neigong or divine embodiment. I used to have
very cool.
binaural theta beats to do those. But now, the goal is to walk in Christ consciousness or whatever equivalent in, a religious tradition. So for the first half, I do that. And the second half, I do a Zen practice of one-pointed focus. And then at night, I usually meditate for an hour at the highest level I can do. And when I practice divine embodiment, which, from a 3D perspective is, you could say, a subconscious or visualization technique.
Right.
From a higher dimensional perspective is taking in the divine energy or the aspect of one that personify as the divine with whatever name or system you use. I mix Greek and Hindu systems because those beings are popular.
Right.
I found taking in that energy, receiving that energy is so joyful, so fulfilling, so energizing that it substitutes sleep at like a 1-to-2 ratio.
Right.
But for me, if I embody a divine energy for an hour, only 2 hours less sleep. So I'm working up to 3 hours of that a day. But that does take a fair amount of mental and physical refinement to keep up. But 3 hours a day is a generally known amount of time to get to a world-class level of expertise in a lot of fields.
Awesome.
So that's
right. So you mentioned Neigong briefly. I mean, our friend Max Reeder, practices the Kunlun Neigong. Is that what you practice? Is that the form of Neigong you do, or?
So, from my understanding, Kunlun is a specific technique, and it's often related to releasing emotions and releasing trapped energy or samskaras or traumas. My practice of Neigong is internal or consciously directed energy work. So if my body is acting up in some way, I'll zap it with energy at a 4D astral energetic level, or visualize white light or perfect function at a holographic matrix manifestation, etc. level, and heal or strengthen myself, or do that for others or for a plant or for any other purpose. There's a lot of practices which fall under the Neigong Qigong umbrella, and again, for efficiency's sake, I have a laser focus for, I'd say, 80% of my practice. The 20% is fun, borrowing from Google's early days. And I feel that releasing older trapped emotions with enough internal awareness, you can pinpoint those as samskaras, as trapped traumas or buckets of cortisol causing inflammation and physical dysfunction. And practice and teach that type of energy work and consciousness work can clear those things. And I don't claim to be a health expert or licensed medical professional, so I'm just sharing ideas here. But for me, that's an efficient thing to do, to need one less technique a day. Because with so many great spiritual techniques out there, you could map out 50 hours of stuff to do every day. So the overall push for efficiency, as long as it's something you enjoy, I think makes a lot more sense than doing like Kundalini yoga and Neigong practice and Qigong practice and all these other things to be at an optimal level. And rotate at a monthly or quarterly basis based on your goals. Again, to get to a world-class level of expertise, to get to expert level rapidly, I feel it's nice to really bucket time and focus till you reach a certain level of skill. So for telekinesis, that might be, I think flashy magic would be, you move a cup of water from 5 feet away into your hand. That's like awesome movie special effects magic.
Right.
I think for most folks, I think anybody can think of what they believe is possible and they believe they can achieve, and figure out a protocol to achieve that and set a goal, and they either succeed or fail at that goal, and then after a certain frame decide to keep practicing or not.
Right, right. Cool, cool. Okay, that's excellent. So David, you do life coaching and obviously you're a spiritual teacher and stuff like that. Do you possibly do healings for other people, or do you teach people to heal themselves and stuff like that? Do you do anything in regards to healing at all, or?
Yeah, at a high level, yes to both. So there's a lot of techniques out there for healing that I'm pretty, I would say objectively, I'm pretty well versed and well trained in.
Mhm,
And of course, it's
mhm.
always the basis of comparison. It's
Right.
really fun. I also kind of prefer strength and skill building over healing. Before I really got into practical mysticism, I was looking at traditional life coaching and the work I do supporting people one on one. I use the word mentoring because it's more personal, and the life coaching umbrella is so vague, and anybody can kind of do it without certification.
Right, right.
The same for mentoring, but I think it's a more sincere umbrella and term. So, again, with the medical disclaimer I mentioned earlier, I offer healing techniques, I offer healing energies, I offer healing intentions, and it's not uncommon for people to report a change in their energy, physiology, psychology. I feel it serves most people better to teach them to heal themselves. But
Right,
take the case of a muscle knot in the 3D body. If you have a deep muscle knot, sometimes it can be
right,
faster to receive a massage or other body work than stretch for however much time and strengthen. There's also a level of comfort. So for me, up until the last year or so, we all have histories, we all have childhoods, we all have traumas or micro traumas or samskaras, however we define it. And up until about a year ago, I would get a lot of sessions to resolve those. What I've been really focusing on the last year is the skill building of internal alchemy or internal transmutation.
mhm.
So if something's bugging me in life and I tune into it and a memory comes up from when I was 8 or 15 or whenever, the you could say outsource, but the provider healing healee relationship where you hire somebody to heal you is, you pay somebody, they take time with you, and they either do it for you in the case of massage therapy, or they walk you through doing it yourself, or they teach you how to do it. And I think the rate limiter for that is capacity. So if somebody's very triggered, very overwhelmed, very not present, very emotionally reactive, and we're all human, it comes up for many of us depending on the details. Sometimes we need, or we believe we need, an external healer, and so I'm fully okay with that. And if somebody requests that and it feels aligned, I'd offer that. I feel though for the inner adult, for the aligned self, moving up the ladder of getting healing versus learning to heal yourself versus healing yourself versus instantly transmuting anything. There's a lot of stories of yogis healing wounds, reattaching severed limbs, all this,
Wow. Okay.
super high level 0.0001% of ability. Like, when Roger Bannister was the first documented person to run the 4 minute mile, it was a
Right,
bicycle,
right,
and then he did it, and he was like in a league of his own. Now a lot of people do it, and the bell curve has widened.
right, right,
So before I really took on that responsibility, that full responsibility for my own system, and just
right.
the realness of my current understanding of this stuff, I got a ton of sessions, and I justified it by saying, "Oh, there's pain, or there's this data point, or whatever," and that's okay. We all shift at whatever level. Some people don't believe they can, or they don't want to, or I would say in an extreme scenario, if somebody's incapacitated and
Right,
an acupuncturist works on them and that helps their recovery, then okay,
right,
that's very specific. But it really does come down to personal preference. It does take energy, effort, will, and skill to heal oneself. And, sometimes there's just not perceived time or energy available in the day or the week to do that. So I'm available to serve in a lot of different ways as it feels aligned with each person.
right, right. Awesome, awesome. Okay, okay. So, obviously, you're a phenomenal teacher, and you're a metaphysical energy practitioner. What are your ultimate goals as a teacher and also as a practitioner? Do you want to get to the point where you can we talked about healing for the last few minutes? Do you want to get to the point where you can heal someone instantly? Um, do you want to be as big as Tony Robbins? What are your goals as a teacher and practitioner?
Yeah, for sure. Great question. So I have 4 short answers for you.
Okay.
because we can have many goals. So my stretch goals, which are in my book, Magic is Real, which people can find through the link to my website, or just hit me up on DM because I commented here.
Okay.
The chapter 13, The Future of Magic, has a lot of mentions of stretch goals. So again, the super high level expert with some basis for what's been written and talked about from high level beings are things like regrowing rainforests rapidly, reforming the glaciers,
Wow.
creating very powerful group fields to shift the consciousness of an area and have crime rates reduced. And all
Wow. Okay.
I've seen and heard of these things at a much smaller scale. I think it would take some time to get all the, research grade science on it that's just starting to come out in the last 30, 40 years, and especially the last 5. And even though there's censorship everywhere, I am building a science of magic research library that I like to have a pretty high standard for. So I always like to say I'm not a walking dissertation, but for anybody who really cares about the research and references for this subject matter, it's findable, and I can share, some of the things I found. So that's one stretch goal. I'd say so yes to instant healing of anything. I have heard of and met people who, reportedly touched somebody and that person's cancer was cured instantly, or looked at somebody
Wow.
and
Okay.
prayed to that person. It would really take the healer and the healee being in an fMRI before, during, and after the healing times maybe 10,000 to have, the ironclad data that the FDA would want. But Joe Dispenza talks about this too. I really respect Joe. I love what he does.
Mhm.
And says that people come to his week-long advanced retreat workshops, their brain scans, etc., show Parkinson's, MS, Alzheimer's, all this intense stuff, people who can't walk. They're in the group field, meaning amplified magical field or amplified consciousness, magnetic, electric, chi, whatever words you'd use, field, and they leave without Parkinson's, able to walk, without MS, etc. And he has all that data, and he has tons of testimonials, and I really respect him, and I'd love to get to that level, both with live events, which for him, last I checked, were like 2,500 for a week long. I think that's a great deal for what's delivered. But we need a lot of people like that, and I do think the world-class level of performance at these is a passive form where somebody can connect with the consciousness of another being and receive that healing. I'd love to be able to offer that to people and have all the documentation to support it, to actually, make a medical claim, which I think many people can't and shouldn't do. But I also feel it's more valuable for people to be able to connect wherever they are. There's a lot of stories of people connecting to or praying to, I feel, Christ, Buddha, some high-level beings, and receiving that healing or surrendering to that. And
Mhm.
there's also a lot of other, Christ and Jesus, whatever you define it as, human or God, if that's in your belief system, that depends on the individual.
Mhm.
But there's a lot of, ascended master people, and then just human practitioner at an expert level, which I feel is much more accessible of a definition. And
Mhm.
my acupuncturist mentioned one guy. I'd have to look up his name. His first name's Charlie, and Adam gave the example that when people, with high blood pressure who are tuned in connect with and ask healing of this being without any dialogue, their blood pressure goes down right away, and all this other stuff. And I think that's really cool. I wouldn't want people to be dependent on me, even if, and I feel hopefully when, I kind of have beliefs and knowledge, but just to be, a bit more chill about it, I'm at the level where, those things can be possible either from me or around me.
Mhm.
I may not always be in this body. Likely I'd be out of it within 100 years. And,
Right.
hopefully I think human civilization is going to survive longer than that. And so providing teaching, providing instruction is great. Providing anchor points is great. So if somebody's in space, if somebody's in lockdown, if somebody is paralyzed from the neck down, if somebody can't
Mhm.
communicate, if whatever reason, to be able to provide the resources for any person to have the most significant healing that they'd want as quickly as possible, I think our civilization's ready for that. And while 3D medical technology is always evolving, I think there's enough out there about the spiritual, non-physical, I think it might even be accurate to say dark matter, dark energy route, showing that physics is probably going to justify more and more of this every few years, as I feel it has been. And I feel that the areas are going to merge. Quantum computing has even been talked about as having a lot of overlap with consciousness and reality creation. And there's some neat science about that. If you're curious, I'd be happy to share what I can share offhand.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah. So not a quantum physicist. So if I, just that little disclaimer, but, Dispenza mentions that particles at the quantum level appear and disappear from our, mainstream visible reality 7 times a second. A lot of high-level thought leaders in the last 100 years of, physics and spirituality have mentioned everything is vibration, everything is energy, 99% plus of atoms are empty space. Even physical things like the protons and neutrons and atoms, you can break it down to energetic vibrational fields, through the right viewpoints. So in terms of, quantum, I think there's decent data that the observer effect, which is consciousness, can affect systems at a small scale. There has been a decent amount about random number generators. The biggest question is at a macrocosmic scale, how does quantum work? And I feel that quantum, through consciousness, affects probability. So if you believe the probability of levitating an elephant and making it, fart sprinkles is, near zero, you can manifest all you want. It's not going to happen. But if you believe there's a decent likelihood of you finding a dollar bill on the ground within a week and you magic that up, I would offer that likely the probability of that raises. And as different manifestation work, shows up in your life, validated by a rational mind, most people believe in themselves more and aim higher. And I have a ton of stories about that for myself. So on the quantum computing side, it's very interesting because with the human being area, consciousness is the final arbiter. We have an electrochemical brain. AI has been said to be an electro-mechanical brain. And, you can talk about the definition of intelligence and consciousness, comparing the two however you want. But especially in the field of remote viewing and probabilistic models of future events in quantum and supercomputers, I think there's data out there, and I think I've read enough, but I can't cite all the sources offhand, that there is some overlap. And I feel one of the bridges of that overlap are chi devices, and honestly working with crystals. I think there's music in the background. It's not sure where. It's not here, but there's RF photography. I've heard that in Russia they'll measure somebody's energy field, and if the energy field shows that they can't survive the surgery is delayed or canceled for obvious reasons. So for crystals like this beautiful labradorite, I think it's very possible, if not definitely possible, to measure the energy in this and how it affects the energy in the human system. So there's a lot of associations with labradorite and the throat chakra. And I really look forward to getting, devices that can show this in real time. But I wager that if my throat chakra shows up at 85% health and strength, and I hold this crystal near it for a while, that 85 will go up.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So with that being said, I have worked with a practitioner who has a lot of certificates, and he showed that certain organs and muscle systems in my body improve when crystal's near them, or touching it. And you could say whatever you want about the placebo effect, but it works even if it's the placebo effect.
Really? Wow. Okay. So there is a science behind it, because I'm not too familiar with crystals. I'm more of a telekinetic qigong guy or whatever. But I mean, I've heard the benefits of crystals, but I wasn't sure if it was myth, if it was just like you said, a placebo or not. So yeah, if there's scientific data that crystals are real, then now I'm excited to look more into that. That's interesting. Wow.
Yeah, I think my library of magical research, which would take honestly a couple hundred hours if people look through everything, this is a life path for me.
Right.
The William Tiller Institute comes to mind as an organization that I think has put out a lot of data about qi. But so the placebo effect is a phrase you can use for 3D material reductionist viewpoints. I think at the energetic level, which, as I wrote about in my book, Magic is Real, is the astral energetic is fourth dimensional awareness operating system. And the What the Bleep movie has a rendition of a film strip called Flatland that can help explain a four-dimensional or tesseract perspective on 3D reality. I have a few others. So just going with that and leaving the 3D reductionist view behind, because most people here I don't think are anchored in that, say this crystal, for all the reasons, gives off a certain type of chi. And say you absorb that chi for whatever reasons, your energy system has been changed. And because it's been changed, your experience is different. And while it's not a perfect analogy, I have this nitrous oxide supplement that I use as a pre-workout and as a circulation booster.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not affiliated with this company at all.
Right.
And there's decent amounts of data that beetroot extract can boost nitrous oxide levels in the body. So what I'm really hoping for, whoever does it is fine. If I end up doing it, sweet. I just want this out there for the world.
Right.
Like, hey, if you have a crystal with these specs, there's tons of specs, and you do formula XYZ, your body will be affected in ways 1, 2, 3. I think we really need that type of system of magic. And as I spoke about in a live I gave yesterday, I think one of the best ways of doing that is have it be open sourced, where the people who are the most knowledgeable, seed it, like in Wikipedia's early days, experts in certain subfields would make a page, and then editing for that page is available for different people for different reasons to get it really solid. And I'd be so happy if we had stuff like that and it were mainstream, if it were scientifically legit. And
Right.
I feel that there might be stuff like that out there, but we didn't grow up with it. It's not part of the modern reductionist medical system. But if it's legitimate, and I feel a lot of it is, I think there's an argument that it should be. But even if it's not, anybody who's tuned in, we all can take responsibility for our own lives. And, I think there's a lot of value here and practical value and just awesome excitement that there's all this magic in the world. So let's tune into it and let's discover, improve upon, and teach and share the real magic of this world.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you recently made a post that was really, David makes, lots of awesome posts on Facebook. I see David posting something on Facebook, like a random Facebook group, and you see hundreds of comments and stuff like that. And his posts are amazing. His posts are very interesting and compelling. You recently made a post regarding something about the CIA declassified document of manifesting. You mentioned to me earlier offline that, off camera, that you have a Facebook group where you can learn about stuff like that. Could you tell me a little more about that?
Sure. And the group, real quick, is called The Science of Magic, and it's linked. I made a comment in the post where this live appears, so people can join it. It's a public group, and that CIA document.
So for those of you, watching on Facebook Live, you can see it in the comments. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that document was so exciting and so empowering for the perspective of credibility. I feel that's always on our minds because, again, the word magic, we might think of Harry Potter, we might think of David Copperfield. And while there's always or often, truths in plain sight or bits of legit transmission in entertainment or fantasy, the government in many people's eyes is, has a certain amount of credibility. And I think rightfully so in many areas, and others, that's a topic of discussion I don't personally like to get into. But this document is called, and it's publicly available on the CIA's website, actually, is Analysis and Assessment of the Gateway Process. That's the title. It was written in 1983. It was declassified in 2003. And there's so much on there about higher awareness and certain teachers, which came out in 83. So there's been advances in awareness and in writing since then. But there's so many elements of this, like hemisync binaural beat brainwave technology, biofeedback, hypnosis, different brain regions involved in altered states of consciousness. There's so much rich stuff in this. And it's exciting because, it talks about brainstem as well and energy entrainment as well. And, all these words can be unpacked and they can be quite heavy, but personally, I feel it's validating. It adds credibility. It adds a focus on certain useful practices. Because just thinking about it in conversation, it's my opinion that if a government or big organization that often has many people involved in major decisions invests a lot of time and money in something, or keeps doing it, because there's a CIA remote viewing program that a lot of people have talked about, there's got to be some return on investment for stuff like that. And, it could just be politically pushed. It could be a special interest group that lobbied for it and there's no basis. But honestly, I think for this stuff, there is a basis. Documents like this support this basis, and it's very empowering. Telekinesis, I think, can be useful. An extreme example is like Neo. If somebody shoots at you to dodge a bullet or make a bullet go down, that's
right.
Bullets travel at the speed of sound.
Our friend Max kind of does that, right? I mean, it's not, he doesn't regard it telekinesis, but he does the empty forces. Did you, by the way, learn that from him or seen him do it?
We've practiced empty force, and I like it, but how I understand it, I feel it, and my understanding is not complete at all. I feel it can and should be evolved. I've heard that when somebody's body is moved through the empty force technique, which seems akin to Qigong, and I've heard of that and seen that done on video many times since I was 12. That was one of the big inspirations for me to start studying all this stuff. I've heard that it doesn't feel pleasant in the body. And I've heard it's often used for self-defense, but it often is hard to do unless both people are tuned in and connected. And, comparing it to Aikido, where, I've heard the goal is to disable an attacker or disable an attacker's will without hurting them, which I feel is an appropriate way to use martial arts if needed.
Right.
If somebody's about to attack you and you empty force them and their body moves in a way where they're not a threat to you in that moment or for a while, ideally without hurting them, that's cool. But I feel if somebody's going to be physically aggressive towards me, or say somebody's about to slip and fall in traffic and I'm good enough at empty force to push them backwards and hope it gets on camera, right?
Right.
It should feel good, right? We gravitate towards things that feel good. And if somebody's aggressive or super triggered and, acting, you could say, violently or irrationally, I feel that if their body could be moved and they could feel love and joy with that, aggression would wind down. If somebody's about to come at you and punch you and you pull out a lead pipe and you're like, hey, if you come at me, I'm going to, smash you with this pipe, that doesn't engender peacefulness. That's not really a spiritual evolution thing. If it's to save your life and the person's legitimately psychotic, like, hey, that's a special case. But from my, again, very limited understanding of empty force, if I were to pioneer that or learn it and improve upon it and teach it, not saying I'm qualified to do that yet, I would like to see it include loving, peaceful, nourishing vibes instead of forceful vibes, and I would actually pick a different name.
Awesome. Okay.
David Hawkins writes about in his seminal book, Power versus Force. The word force just carries infringing upon another person's will. And I think a lot of, again, if somebody's psychotic or about to violently attack you, that might be a certain case. But some of the best transmissions and stories I've heard is when somebody offers an idea, truth, and energy, and the other person, freely receives that information, and there's a change in their internal environment, and their desire shifts as well. And I could share a short story about this I heard from one of my sifus, if you like.
Sure, yeah, go for it.
So I'm just going to make up some names. So we'll say John, Bill, and Ted. So John was sitting on a subway, and he just got his black belt, and he was so excited to use his training and prove himself. So some ego there. And there was somebody who looked pretty disheveled, seemed to be homeless, and a very angry, possibly an alcoholic named Bill. And he was kind of aggressive, and all these people were leaving the subway because he was so aggressive. And John wanted to provoke him so he could use his skills and, show how awesome he was. So he blew a kiss at Bill, and Bill started to get, pretty aggressive to retaliate because he felt ridiculed. And at the same moment, Ted, an older martial arts master, more mature guy in the same car, said, "Hey, old friend." And, Ted and Bill kind of bonded with some rapport. And Ted was like, "Bill, why are you angry?" It was like, my wife left me and I got fired. And Ted was like, "Oh, that sounds rough. I see you're drinking something there. What are you drinking?" And Bill's like, "I'm drinking wine." And Ted's like, "Wine? I love wine." And eventually, through that rapport and compassion and unconditional love, Bill came over and was crying on Ted's shoulder and releasing his trauma, and his desires for aggressiveness faded away. And John realized, he was being an idiot and went back for more training. And I feel that, Ted could have empty forced Bill and just sat him down so no punches were thrown. But I feel in that moment, Ted's loving offers in conversation was superior to if Ted were an empty force master. Now, if Bill was coming at John physically, that's totally, probably a more legit reason to use empty force. But I feel there are higher ways of dissolving and preventing conflict that I would prioritize for myself, learning over empty force. But empty force is really cool. So,
yeah. Do you know Alexander Krakolinic, or?
I'm not familiar.
Oh, he's the guy that taught Max empty force. But
yeah. Oh yeah, he mentioned that. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Okay, awesome. Well, David, I want to wrap this live up pretty soon. Is there any final thoughts? Is there any tips for people that are watching on YouTube or Facebook? That's just maybe perhaps embarking on their spiritual journey. Maybe they're feeling stuck. Is there any tips for people like that?
Yeah, there's so many, and it really depends on the level where people are at. So
right.
I love giving short answers, but this is a complex question because it's so person dependent.
Right.
But I say a general answer is be real with yourself, be real with what you want to experience and why, and find a person or a body of knowledge, if not multiples, where you feel confident that you can make the transformation you seek, and make it specific. If you want to learn piano, do you want to play Flight of the Bumblebee? Get really specific. And I would say one of the things that I can offer, if not many of the things, is I have a book out, Magic is Real. I have a ton of free videos on YouTube. I have a lot of pre-recorded courses and content, like an astral projection workshop series, a wizard school that talks about chakras and channeling and manifestation and karma and all that fun stuff. And very soon, starting this Sunday from the date of recording, I'll be offering, many live streams. I'd love to offer 5 a week, 2 on Sunday night, 2 on Tuesday night, each an hour, and then a bit of a longer one Thursdays. And I plan to offer stuff on life purpose, astral projection, communication, and the science of magic. Communication is more of a 3D, but also the astral part. And those will be a series, and there'll be more topics after. Where Thursdays are, and maybe the first one on Tuesday as well, I'm still architecting this, will be groups with more of a focus on Q&A, which I have at the end of all my stuff, and certain groups that will be professional paid groups, where there's more singular focuses on individual people, which would rotate, where there'd be a lot more direct interaction and group support. I'd also offer that if somebody wants a custom tailored curriculum for what they'd like to build, I love offering that. I love, I do most sessions by phone. I live in California, and it's really fun to help people create curriculums for themselves and be real in what needs to happen. I'd also say that if somebody feels that they'd like to learn from me, but they don't feel I'm the right, teacher or guide for them, that's fine. I love offering referrals to whether it's other teachers or other bodies of work, because I just care about people and humanity and where things are going. I like to sustain professionally so I can keep doing this work, but I also know everyone has a different thing that works for them. And I'm just excited to see that the field grow, the field get validated, people share really awesome and excellent results. And I'd say the one practice that I'd put more valuable than any others is honestly Zen meditation. Because when you can have laser sustained focus, you can apply it to all these other skills and sub-skills. But if the mind is distracted and the monkey mind won't turn off, it'd be pretty hard to learn Reiki. It'd be pretty hard to get good at telekinesis. It'd be pretty hard to channel accurately, with the exception of, temporary ego death, moving out of the way and allowing another consciousness to come in. But even that, I feel, is not ideal to do unless you have good guidance, because if you think about allowing another consciousness in, imagining allowing microbes in, some can help the body, some can harm the body. So I feel having a good human teacher who can tune into you and get you and interact with you and support you and has experience is pretty essential. And, you know, a lot of people do some of that stuff for free to a point. It's usually in groups because we all have a daily bandwidth. But I feel that that's very imperative. And I'd say second to that, for people who like learning passively, just from a basic standpoint, anybody who sells courses, whether it's myself or other people out there, you know, care to have their stuff be valuable, so people will keep engaging with it and not, you know, and not keep asking for refunds. So there's that basic level. And while there's a lot of free stuff out there, I'd say that free stuff is more reliable when a lot of people support it. So that is a bit of a push for the foundational fundamental teachings or teachers who have been, you know, like Deepak Chopra, who've been active for 20 plus years, publishing all these books. But I would also say it's a personal thing, right? You resonate with a person or a video or other content, and regardless of their history, sometimes people know something is true. I have a lot of people who haven't had a lot of deep one-on-one experience with me, but they watch or read my content and they say they get goosebumps. They feel so aligned, or crazy, amazing synchronicities happen in their life. You know, there's somebody I recently met, and I shared, you know, for this area of your life you're working on, this certain book might be mentioned 3 times in the next week. And if so, that's a strong universal indicator for, you know, for you to read that book. So I was general in the language. I wasn't like giving a prophecy of absolutism that could trump free will. And interestingly enough, this person mentioned yesterday that 3 people mentioned this book and they're going to read it. Now, I didn't crawl through their social media. I don't know if they texted everybody in their network. And I don't think either of those things happened. And when stuff like that happens, it is really cool. And, you know, I heard of a Lockheed Martin executive who mentioned all points in space and time are connected. So there's a lot of bases for remote viewing, premonitions, stuff like that. Because, you know, if you can accurately tune in, whether in a trance state or just a general point of access, which I feel I've had more and more often over the years, then future probabilities get easier and easier to discern accurately. And that's what's really fun for me personally, because it's just so useful. And there's so much application for that, like the Wall Street Journal front page story I heard about where, you know, psychics beat the stock market in a pretty solid experiment. I've heard stuff like that is still going on. I haven't crunched the data, but this field is really exciting. And yeah, I'm just bursting with joy. I could talk for another hour, but I want to respect your and everyone's time.
Awesome. Okay. Well, thank you so much, you know, once again for this interview, David. So David's links will be in the comments for the people that are watching on Facebook Live, and for the people on YouTube, we'll like once again make sure to check out the description, and we'll also put it in the comments as well and pin it, so you guys can definitely check that out. So, well, thank you once again so much for your time, David. David, you just, you know, gave me so much phenomenal knowledge, and yeah, this was so awesome. So.
Yeah, Kenny, it's a great honor. And what I'd also offer for anybody tuning in, if you have any specific questions, please DM me. You could also post them in the comments or tag someone. And if you guys would like me to be on again, or if that's ever done, or Kenny, you would, I'd be happy to show up another time. And again, I have a ton of stuff on YouTube and done a ton of other interviews, and this is really fun. And just thank you so much for inviting me and for holding space and providing the opportunity to share and connect.
Awesome. Thank you so much. See you guys.